Hello, I'm Anthony Hughes. Thank you for joining me in this video where I will help you learn your way around Dorico in just 11 minutes. I'm using Dorico Elements, although much of what you see here is relevant to Dorico SE, Dorico Pro, and Dorico for iPad. There's a great comparison page on our website that details the differences between these versions. When you launch Dorico, the first thing you see is the hub, which is designed to get you started quickly. The Learn tab has links to all sorts of useful information, including some hands-on tutorial projects, the latest videos on our YouTube channel, as well as links to the user forum, the Dorico reference manual, and the latest news from our blog. There's quick access to your most recently opened Dorico projects. Just double-click to open one. And a tab dedicated to creating new projects. You can start from scratch or use one of the inbuilt templates. Here on the right, you have the option to set some details about your new project, including a title, and down here you can specify a time signature, key signature, and the number of bars to begin with. With that info set, you can create your project, and you're now shown the main Dorico window where you will spend most of your time working. Along the top of the window is the toolbar, which remains constant across all the different parts of the Dorico workflow. We're currently in write mode, which is where you compose, transcribe, edit, and arrange your music. We'll have a look at the other modes later on. This is the layout selector, which lets you switch between the full score layout and each instrumental part layout. And you can show the tab bar, where you can load multiple layouts at the same time. There are buttons to launch the video window and mixer window, and then the transport controls for playing back your project, turning on the metronome, and overriding the project tempo track with a constant value. Perhaps you want to record some music at a slower speed. There's also the scrub playback button that auditions notes as you drag your mouse over them, and some undo and redo buttons. Over on the left here is the notes panel, which gives you the tools you need for note input in Dorico. You can start and stop note input, select durations, accidentals, and articulations. The toolbox is loaded with buttons for inputting chords and voices, tuplets, and grace notes. Typing the note names on your computer keyboard or playing on a connected MIDI keyboard will input notes at the position of this orange caret, or you can click to input at any position with your mouse. You can also select a staff and press record to start real-time MIDI input. And Dorico does a brilliant job of rendering that music so that it looks great. I've recently uploaded a whole series of videos all about note input, so please check those out if you're getting started, as they tell you everything you need to know. Over on the other side of the window is the notations toolbox. The control at the top of the stack lets you choose whether the buttons open panels containing palettes of music notation items that you can click into your score, or invoke popovers into which you type what you want, and Dorico magically transforms it into the required notation. All of these popovers can be summoned also with easy-to-remember key commands. With an active selection in the score, hold down Shift and press the first letter of the notation you require. So C for clefs, D for dynamics, K for key signatures, and so on. It's T for tempo, so don't get tripped up looking for time signatures, as they're here as M for meter. There are numerous ways to edit your music in Dorico. You can drag notes to new pitches or rhythmic positions. With an active selection, you can right-click to show a context menu of commands you can invoke. The buttons in the Notes panel and toolbox that you use to input music now allow you to edit your music. For example, dotting notes, or switching music to a different voice, or turning a run of notes into tuplets, or grace notes. There's also the jump bar, which you get by pressing J, and this lets you search for commands that you can perform on your selection. For example, duplicating notes to the next staff, filtering for specific notation types, or transposing your music. At the bottom of the window is the status bar, which shows you various information about what you're looking at or have selected in the music area. Here you can switch between concert pitch and a transposed score, see details about your selection, use the hand tool to move your view of the music, switch to galley view, which can be helpful during note input, and zoom controls, as well as various other things. Also on the status bar is the button to open the lower zone that's home to various different panels, the first of which is the Properties panel. Properties are contextual and relevant only to your selection. So if you click on notes, you'll see all sorts of ways to control many different aspects of those notes. If you select a dynamic, the available properties change to dynamic specific ones, and so on. There are then panels that can be used for note input. A keyboard panel a fretboard panel for when you're inputting guitars and so on, and drum pads that are enabled when you have an unpitched percussion staff selected. You can also view the mixer here in the lower zone, as well as in its own dedicated window. And the final panel in the lower zone is the key editor that lets you see and interact with your music in a piano roll view right alongside the notation. This is incredibly powerful, especially as it lets you edit the start and end position of notes without affecting the notation, and has lanes for editing velocity and dynamics and all the MIDI controller channels in order to take advantage of the features and characteristics of your loaded sounds. Let's take a look at the other modes that Dorico has to offer. Setup mode is all about the setup of your project. You'll notice that the structure of the window is the same across all modes, with left, right, and lower zones, offering the most relevant tools and features that you need during the current phase of your workflow. In setup mode, you can add players and instruments to your project. Players hold instruments, and you can even give a player more than one instrument for situations such as a flautist that also doubles on piccolo. Players and instruments have all sorts of settings of their own. For example, this is how you choose who will see chord symbols and diagrams. The right zone in setup mode houses the layouts panel. Here you can see and manage all of the layouts that then populate the layout selector we were looking at earlier. You can create your own layouts and easily choose which players are included. The flows panel in the lower zone lets you add entirely separate flows of music in order to build multi-movement works from sonatas up to operas, collections of songs, film score cues, worksheet questions, anything you can think of really. It's an incredibly powerful and unique aspect of Dorico's feature set. If write mode is all about inputting and editing the actual music, engrave mode is all about the graphical side of your score. Freely move music items around without changing their semantic musical meaning. Control the layout of systems and pages. In Dorico, we work in frames rather than pages, with the music flowing from frame to frame. There are also tools for editing staff spacing and note spacing. These are pretty advanced features used by professional engravers, and you have that control available to you here in Dorico Elements, as well as in Dorico Pro, of course. Play mode is all about the playback of your music. The track view shows an overview of the current flow, and double-clicking a track opens it in the key editor. The inspector shows various information about the instruments selected in the track view. Dorico uses VST instruments to play back your music, and here's where you open those VST instruments to perhaps change the loaded sound or edit it in some way. For example, my drum set track is using Groove Agent SE for playback, and I can choose a different preset in order to use different sounds and MIDI drum patterns in my score. I have an electric bass in this project, for which the default sound is reasonably vanilla. However, I can load an insert effect, such as this bass amp simulator, and drastically alter and beef up the sounds in innumerable ways. It's also possible to load other third-party VST instruments and effects that you may own. You can then route your score instruments to these sound libraries and use expression maps to allow markings in the notation to trigger the different articulations and techniques of the library. And once you have it all working as you like, you can save your setup as a playback template to reuse in other projects. The final mode is print mode, but this is more than just a print dialog. For each layout in your project, you can define a whole set of options. Firstly, whether to send the layout to a printer or to export it as a graphics file. You can set up the format of the print, tailored exactly to your requirements. And when ready, you can select as many layouts as you need and print or export them all at once, even if those settings are different for each layout. What's more, the settings are saved, so you can easily reuse them in the future. The final aspect of Dorico that I'd like to tell you about today is the library menu. There are pretty much as many different ways of presenting music notation as there are pieces of music. So while we've set what we think are some fairly sensible defaults, we think it's very important to allow users to change the options that drive Dorico to suit their individual needs. At a basic appearance level, you can change the look and feel of the entire project by using a different music font, for example, one that looks like it's been handwritten. You can also change the font styles for all the different music and text items in your score. And then you have the options dialogues. Layout options can differ from layout to layout. So you can set your full score to have large time signatures and bar numbers every bar, but not in the parts. You might like your instrumental parts to show multi-bar rests, and you don't need them to show staff labels. So you can set all those kinds of options here. Notation options lets you choose how and when to display accidentals and how notes and beams are grouped and so on. And these can differ from flow to flow because different pieces of music will call for different conventions to be applied. Playback options give you control over how Dorico interprets your music and plays it back, including humanization features. And if you find yourself always setting the same options, you can save them as your own defaults that will then be used in all future projects. So now you know your way around Dorico, why don't you take a look yourself? There's a free trial available, there are loads of tutorial videos on our YouTube channel to help you get started and delve deeper into this rich and wide-reaching application. If you subscribe to our channel and hit the bell button, you'll be told whenever my friends or I add a new video. I'm Anthony Hughes, thanks for watching.